Hidden facts about the Viking conquests. Did you know that many Viking warriors, instead of dying in glorious battle, actually settled down as farmers, trading their swords for plows and seamlessly blending into the very lands they conquered? This surprising truth, far from the bloodthirsty myths, shows a hidden side of their conquests that history often forgets. We often picture Vikings as only raiders, but their story is much more colorful and complex. For many years, history books told us a simple tale: Vikings attacked, burned, and left. But new discoveries are changing this old idea. Take, for example, the tiny village of Repton in England. Archaeologists found a huge mass grave there, with hundreds of bodies. For a long time, people thought these were just local people killed by Vikings. But a deep study, reported by the University of Bristol in 2018, looked at the bones closely. They found that many of these bodies were actually Vikings themselves, suggesting they lived and died there, not just raided and left. These Vikings weren't just passing through. They were staying. They were building homes, planting crops, and even marrying local people. Imagine a Viking warrior, feared across the sea, now spending his days tending sheep or fixing a fence. It's a picture very different from the common stories we hear. This shows us that the conquest was often more like a big move, a settling down, rather than just a quick raid for treasure. Think about what motivated these long voyages. It wasn't always just gold or glory. Sometimes it was about land. The Viking homelands in places like Norway and Denmark were becoming crowded. Good farmland was hard to find, especially for younger sons who wouldn't inherit their father's land. So, setting sail across the rough seas was a way to find a new beginning. A report from the National Museum of Denmark in 2021 highlighted how important land scarcity was in pushing Viking expansion. When Vikings arrived in new places, they didn't always just fight. Sometimes they traded. They had amazing ships, called longships, that could go far and fast. These ships were not just for war, they were also for business. Vikings traded furs, amber, walrus ivory, and even slaves. They brought back silver coins, silk, and spices. This trade created new connections between far-off lands, long before many people imagined. A study published in the Journal of Archaeology and Ancient History in 2019 showed how extensive these Viking trade networks were, stretching from North America to the Middle East. One of the biggest hidden facts is how much the Vikings changed the places they conquered. In England, especially in a part called the Danelaw, Viking laws and ways of life became very common. They brought new words to the English language. Words like sky, window, leg, and ugly all came from the Old Norse language of the Vikings. This wasn't just about fighting, it was about mixing cultures. Experts at the British Library have detailed how deep the linguistic impact of Old Norse was on early English. Many Viking conquests were not quick, easy victories. They were long, hard fights, often lasting years. The locals didn't just give up. They fought back bravely. King Alfred the Great of Wessex is a famous example. He fought the Vikings for many years and even managed to make a peace treaty with them. This treaty divided England, giving the Vikings a large part, but also letting Alfred keep his kingdom. This shows that the Vikings were not all-powerful. They had to negotiate and compromise. This historical struggle is well documented by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a collection of Old English historical records. Another fascinating hidden fact is the role of Viking women. While men often went on raids, women played a huge part in building the new settlements. They managed the farms, raised families, and kept the new communities going. They were not just stay-at-home wives. They were strong, independent figures who helped create the new Viking lands. Recent archaeological finds, reported by Smithsonian Magazine in 2020, have shown that some Viking women even traveled and helped set up settlements in places like Iceland and Greenland. Their efforts were crucial for the long-term success of these new homes. Think about the places the Vikings went. We know about England and France, but they also sailed much, much farther. They were the first Europeans to reach North America, about 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Leif Erikson, a famous Viking explorer, landed in a place he called Vinland, which we believe is modern-day Newfoundland in Canada. This incredible journey shows just how skilled their sailors were and how adventurous they were. This astounding voyage and settlement attempt is supported by archaeological evidence found at Lance aux Meadows, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, further confirming the sagas. They even went deep into Russia, establishing trade routes and influencing the formation of early Russian states. The word Rus, which led to Russia, might even come from a group of Vikings called the Rus. These Vikings were more interested in trade and building towns than in just raiding. They traveled along rivers, creating a network of paths that linked the Baltic Sea to the Byzantine Empire, a powerful Christian empire in the east. This extensive reach is explored in detail by the Institute for Scandinavian Studies in their ongoing research on early medieval trade. The Vikings also left their mark in surprising ways. In Ireland, they founded cities like Dublin, Waterford, and Limerick. These were not just Viking strongholds, but important trading centers that grew into major cities. So, next time you hear about these Irish cities, remember they have Viking roots. This urban development aspect of Viking activity is often overlooked, as highlighted by a research paper from the University College Dublin in 2022. Many people think of Vikings as wild, uncontrolled barbarians. But they had very clear laws and a complex social system. They had assemblies, called things, where free men could discuss laws, settle disputes, and elect leaders. These assemblies were a very early form of democracy, showing that Viking society was more organized than often believed. This legal structure reveals a sophisticated side to their culture, as explained in many historical texts, including those curated by the Icelandic Sagas database. The Viking Age wasn't just about warfare, it was also about incredible craftsmanship. They were expert woodcarvers, jewelers, and metalworkers. Their ships were works of art, strong enough to cross oceans but light enough to be rowed up rivers. Their jewelry, weapons, and tools show a high level of skill and artistic beauty. These items tell us a story of a people who valued beauty and function. Examples of this craftsmanship are proudly displayed at the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo, Norway. The end of the Viking Age also holds hidden facts. It wasn't a sudden stop. It was a slow change. As they settled in new lands, they slowly became part of those new cultures. They adopted Christianity, built churches, and stopped raiding. Their descendants became kings, nobles, and farmers in the lands their ancestors once conquered. The Norman conquest of England in 1066, led by William the Conqueror, a descendant of Vikings who settled in France, is a powerful example of this transformation. This major historical event, detailing the shift from Viking raider to European monarch, is a cornerstone of medieval history, with extensive analysis from the Bay Area Research Group. So, the next time you hear about the Vikings, remember these hidden facts. They were not just raiders. They were explorers, traders, farmers, lawmakers, and settlers. They were people who traveled far, adapted, and deeply shaped the world they encountered. Their story is a powerful reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems. It's a rich tapestry of fights, friendships, changes, and new beginnings, all woven together by brave men and women who dared to sail into the unknown. Their legacy lives on, not just in forgotten battlefields, but in the words we speak, the cities we live in, but the very ground beneath our feet.